Assalamualaikum everyone. I am Zara Salman. I'm the CEO of CDPR, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this session of the Hot Policy Exchange. Particularly this session because I think the topic for me personally, and I'm sure for a lot of you, is very very interesting and very unique for us. We're going to be talking about how women rise to the top echelons of corporate governance and how they navigate these roles. And usually, when research is being done about gender and workforce and labor productivity, we talk about how women are facing challenges in terms of their workforce, labor participation, and things like that. But I feel like there hasn't been a lot of research and a lot of talk in Pakistan about female leadership positions and how they've gotten there and what kind of challenges they're facing. So the research that we are basing this session on is being conducted by Nazish Afraz. It's been funded by IGC, and she's looking at how.
Sorry,
Animals.
Because of the data issue, there was
yes, and RUMS, and she's looking at how women in boardrooms, particularly, how they navigate challenges and what impact and influence they have on how the company performs. And the interesting context that is behind this research and behind this topic is that SECP has stipulated that all public listed companies must have at least one female representative on their board, and I think that has caused a bit of trouble for the companies because they seem to be having a trouble finding the right candidates for their boards, and it seems like there's this problem with selection. And once even if they do find the right candidate, there are other issues that these female board members face, and this is whether navigating the dynamics of the boardroom, what kind of influence in their decision making is there, what kind of biases they face, and these are some of the themes that we're going to be discussing. And even besides this, I think one of the questions that arises is gender even a factor, perhaps, because I think journeys for different female leaders has been different, and for some perhaps gender has not been an issue, but for others it may have been an issue. So I think all these sort of subtopics makes this discussion very interesting, and we have an exceptional panel in front of us to be talking about this. So let me first introduce the panel. We have Nazish Afraz, who teaches at the Department of Economics at Lahore University of Management Sciences. She's a phenomenal researcher who CDPR and IGC has worked with. Her research interests lie in industrial development, trade, and education. She serves on the board of Punjab Population Innovation Fund, Pakistan Revenue Automation Limited, and 66 Scholarship Foundation. So she has some experience on the boardroom as well. We have Fatma Zaid. She is the CEO of Abacus, an international technology outsourcing and consulting firm. She has 26 years of experience in advanced progressive solutions in corporate governance, digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and her leadership journey includes serving on various boards such as Abacus, LUMS, Faisal Bank, Kash Foundation, Interloop, Bata Pakistan. She is a certified corporate director from Harvard Business School. We have Fiza Farhan, who is the CEO of ORA Global Development Advisors. She has been advising the government, various development agencies, and the private sector on issues such as climate change, sustainable development, women empowerment. She is the convener of Male Champions of Change Coalition in Pakistan. She was previously the CEO and co-founder of two social enterprises, Baksh Foundation, Baksh Energy Private Limited, and she currently serves on various boards as well, including the board of LUMS. We have Abdul Rahman Raj Saab. He is the commissioner at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. He is a financial services professional with more than 27 years of experience, including 10 years in the civil service, 9 years in asset management, and various consulting with various organizations and multilaterals, etc. Lastly, but not least, we have Amreen Waheed, who is the founder and advisor of Responsible Business Initiative, which is Pakistan's foremost enabler for responsible business practices. She has served as member board of directors for Millitract and other various boards. She has authored Pakistan's first CSR industry status report, and she's globally recognized for her innovative and pioneering work on responsible business policies and practices. So welcome all to everyone. We are grateful that you are here and looking forward to a very interesting discussion. I think Nazish, we will start with you first so that you can set the context and talk a bit about your research.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Zara, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm very excited to introduce this research to you. Like Zara said, I think it's close to our hearts because we've all been on those journeys. So this is actually work in progress. We're about at the halfway mark. Early stages, I'll talk about the research questions in the context. I'll take you through the methodology. There's some very initial findings that we have, and then I have put down some reflections which I think will be good as the panel or the audience, sort of ponder on together. As Zara said, this research centers on the 2017 regulation by the SECP that required at least one woman directors, and it came at a time where board representation and actual representation of women in management was very, very low. You can see here that they were just 1.3% of the CEOs in Pakistan were women at that time, 2017, and 8.8% of them were directors. Just 31% of listed companies had female directors, and by the way, this 1.3% was just 24 women in total. This is related also to our low labor force participation, which is now climbed up very slowly to about 24%. But you will see through this research also how the two things are really connected: women in leadership and women in the labor force, because in a sense you're part of the labor force, but you also make space for women as they come in. The other thing to tell you is that simultaneously I'm doing another paper on women in leadership, focusing on civil service, and we're looking at the Board of Revenue and the police force. And again, there's some very interesting parallels, there's some interesting differences also, and I hope that if we have time, we can flesh those out as well. Now, the SECP regulation came up, and maybe Raisa can say more about this, but it came up largely for equity considerations, and also because we want to get more women in the labor force. So there is an economy level impact that we are looking to have, but the rationale for it actually extends beyond the impact on equity and economy as a whole, but for the company itself. So having diversity in the boardroom means that you have got different perspectives, you're able to have more rigorous debate in the and discussion, and you're able to take more informed decision. There is research that shows that having women reduces board conflict, it's more collaborative, women are more risk averse, compliance generally improves, HR generally improves. But I just want to say that academic empirical research on the impact of quotas is very mixed. We have positive impacts, we also have no impacts and negative impacts. Sometimes the stock market actually reacts very badly to this kind of regulation, especially in European countries where the quotas have gone up to about 40%, right? So, our research is looking to fill this gap for Pakistan, but also to inform the larger, global debate, which is still very much mixed. And one of the reasons that we've gone for a mixed approach, it's a primarily quantitative approach, but we've got a very strong qualitative dimension to it, and some of our panelists have been very kind and given us their time in the qualitative research, and those who haven't, I will be reaching out to them. Because we want to understand not just what happened, but also how it happened and why it happened and why it didn't happen, for example. So that's what we're trying to unpack here. So our research questions are: what is the impact of directors on firm performance? And we're looking here at there are also some public sector firms in our sample, but primarily we're looking at firms where the objective is to make money. So return on equity, return on assets, profit, and so on. Corporate culture and biases regarding women. Now, on biases regarding women, also there is theoretical justification for both the biases to worsen and to get better. Very early when we were in the ideation phase, we realized that when the quota came about, there was a lot of tokenism. A lot of women were being invited on boards just to sit there to tick the box and do nothing further. And when you have women of that sort coming on the board, it can actually reinforce the notion that women don't have value to contribute. So whereas the quota was intended to do the opposite, that when you give women a chance, they do really, really well and they correct biases, you could actually have the opposite. So again, this is an empirical question, whether what happened to biases. Now, in terms of methodology, because I know we have a non-technical, so in terms of the methodology, we have it's a natural experiment, and it's a natural experiment is one when you have a shock to the system. And we are going to be using a difference in differences methodology. I'm not going to go into too much technical details, but the thing is that in this particular case, there is a very strong selection bias. Certain kinds of women opt to have more directors, and some don't. So we need to have a really rigorous methodology to establish causation rather than just correlation. So the methodology is going to be very data-based. It's a panel data set. We've constructed this panel data set. It's taken us 8 months, and Rashma and Myra are both my team members. I would like to also should have introduced them in the beginning. They have really worked very hard to sort of compile this database for 12 years and 300 firms. We also have a panel director level data set on 3,500 directors in these 300 companies. So it's going to be a difference in differences one, and we're adding insights from both male and female directors. So our interviews are in equal proportion interviewing men, because women are not able to compare a situation in boardrooms where there were no women. So we need men to tell us, and there are a lot of the issues which we learned during our field work were not really gender specific. They were more boardroom dynamics specific, and they applied equally to men's voice in in the boardroom. So this is from our data set, and this is the percentage of women on boards. And the blue line is the listed companies, and the orange line is the unlisted companies. And if you see here, there is a very sharp, there's a fairly flat trend, and then there's a sharp increase in the trajectory post 2017 for listed companies, which is exactly what we observe. And for the orange line, which is unlisted companies, it didn't apply there. We have a continuation of the same trend. The other thing I want you to notice here is this kind of fixed difference between the two prior to 2017. This is a key assumption of the difference in differences model, that you have parallel trends prior to the natural experiment, which happened in 2017. So really good candidate for natural experiment. And you can see that this gap here has increased steadily till you get to about 95% compliance in listed companies. So that's our first little bit of data. And the second sort of thing I want to share with you is the difference in experience between men and women. And you can see that on average, men, and we started 2012, that's the beginning of our data. On average, men have about 28 years of experience, and women have about 18 years of experience. And what is interesting to note, and this is natural, right? That's why you needed a quota, because you don't, on merit, you would not find similarly equally qualified and educated women, sort of across the board. And that's why you need a quota to sort of push that up. But what you can see is happening over time is that this gap is closing. And in 2023 now, we have a gap of 7%. So we've closed it by 7 years. So we've closed it by about 3 years. So hardening for men and women on boards. On boards. So the directors who are in those 300 firms that we've looked at, and those 300 boards have about 200 listed companies and about 100 unlisted. So the way that we've actually, maybe I'll just stand for all of it. The way that we have tried to understand this space of what was happening before and what happened post 2017 is to look at this kind of assortative matching that has happened. And if you imagine, the x-axis is a firm's appetite for independence, which is increasing to the right, and a director's appetite for independence, which is increasing to the top. And we have this is prior to 2017, you had a lot of firms who were hiring women directors were in this top right quadrant, which is firms that really valued independence. They wanted value directors. They wanted women who were bringing, experience and technical skills to the table, and women who wanted to be on boards only where they added value. So you had, and the SACP regulation was not always binding for this group of firms because they had multiple women, or at least one woman, even before 2017. You also then have a large number of firms in this space, and these are firms that don't want an independent director. They essentially are family firms that want to retain control over the votes, and they are women shareholders. They could be mothers, they could be wives, they could be sisters who come in as shareholders to secure the vote, but really they are replicating the voice. So it's sort of truly independent voice that we are seeing over here. Now, you did also get some people who by mistake end up in quadrants 1 and 4. So we had an example of a lady who was highly competent. She was a quadrant 2 woman, but she was invited on the board of a public sector company, and she joined, and she learned very quickly that they only wanted chai patty khaye aur ab ghar jaye, and she resigned. Okay, so the people here and here were not sustained, because over here you would not invite somebody who does not have a true value to the board. You've no reason to, and over here this director is not going to stay here. Now, what's interesting is, what happens after 2017. So after 2017, quadrant 2 is, I suppose, the least affected, because these were firms who were on their own journey. And even now, many of these firms set targets that are well beyond the SECP regulation. They set higher targets for themselves. You had like a real ballooning of quadrant 3. And over here, even though, and there was a requirement also to have independent directors. So now you're in this situation where your sister and your mother can't really be your independent director. And so we have what Washma has called corporate Vatta Satta. So there was also that. It's copyrighted to Washma. So if you want to use it, IPRs are over there. So we have this situation where your sister sits on my board and my sister sits on your board. So if people want to get around the SECP regulations, there are lots of ways of doing it, okay? Let's look at some of the experiences some of the ways of characterizing your quadrant 2 and sort of what happened. Now, for quadrant 2 women, being on the board is a very typically gender neutral experience. They don't report facing biases. They have been invited for their technical skills. Their technical inputs are welcome, and they have a great experience. These are highly competent, accomplished women. They typically have a lot of exposure, educated at elite colleges. The other interesting that happens is that because the rest of the board is filled with similar men and women, very secure, very competent. There is a positive feedback loop. You get more exposure, you get more experience, you get more confidence, and this is really our high-level equilibrium. Okay, and in contrast, we have this kind of low-level equilibrium, which has your. I think nothing so much more to say on this. This is your, you're compliant, and nothing really is being moved or shaken here in terms of gender. But the one thing to sort of say about quadrant 2 is that this also includes some family firms. Nearly all the women we spoke to who had done well, who'd gotten to the journey, had male allies. Female allies as well, because they're so few in number that there were fewer female allies, and invariably they were male allies. And these were people who invited them. These were people who made sure they were heard, who invited them to speak, who had their back, who sort of helped acclimatize the environment of the board to sort of accept female authority. And sometimes it was the father. In several firms, if there are daughters who come on the board, and sometimes we have only daughters And there are several daughters who've come on board, and not as token women. They've come on board, they've got the male ally in their father, and they've been able to make very, very substantial contributions and actually grow the firm and take it into different sort of directions. So yes, we do have a little bit of change around here, but the interesting changes for us were the ones that happened in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So quadrant 1, just to remind you, the top one, this is where the firm really wants, and I think I've missed a slide that I want to go back to, sorry. I missed the slide, sorry. Let me, because it becomes relevant to the one that I was talking about. Voice on the board for women is one of, so in voice on the board, gender is one of the factors that determine how much independent voice you are able to have. In practice, so it should be, in theory, it should be that the shareholders are electing the board of directors and they represent the shareholders and so on and so forth. But in reality, it is typically the management that will select the board of directors. So the independence is somewhat a compromise there, on top of which the sponsors and the founders want to retain control. They have put in a lot of their time, they've put in a lot of their money in it, and typically that list will be, if it is a big sponsor, it will be vetted by the sponsor. Similarly, the sponsors and management also want to have people that they feel comfortable working with. They don't want somebody who's going to rock the boat in some cases, who don't want to rock the boat. They don't want that somebody who's going to be very difficult, who's going to, create obstacles in the way. So all of this can compromise. If that is the case, that can compromise actually how much effective voice you have on the board. There is also very interesting trade-off with respect to remuneration. On some boards, you've got remunerations that will go in millions of rupees, and you'll have board meetings in European countries and so on. And there is, the SECP actually has regulated how much of that can happen on banks. I don't know if it's still there or not, but there was, it was there in the middle, because you don't want to buy out your independent director as such, that it's too much of an incentive to actually comply to stay on the board. But on the other hand, there were several people who we spoke to who said, यार लाख रुपए के लिए कौन तैयारी करता है? So they will not actually read the work. They will not participate. They know that they're an independent director on their friend's board, and they're just not incentivized sufficiently to put in any effort. So there is a bit of a balanced situation that affects your incentive to be vocal on the board. And then you have this issue that independent directors, by definition, cannot have professional or personal interests in the company. And if that's the case, they may not be sufficiently motivated. I mean, they have their reputation at stake, but really they don't have a lot of skin in the game. And there's also the information asymmetry between the management and the board. The fiduciary responsibility of oversight is with the board, but they are pretty much entirely dependent on the management to give them the right numbers. Okay, Zara. Okay. We were here, and this is why I wanted to go back, because we never spoke about the other factors that determine voice. Okay, so here you have a firm that essentially wants compliance for the reasons that we spoke about earlier. They don't want to rock the boat, so on and so forth, and they now have to have a woman on the board, and they look around. It can't be their sister, so they're looking around and they say, okay, my banker, so somebody who, my accountant, so some people, my CFO, my CEO, so people who have risen in and know the company very well professionally, is someone who makes a great candidate, and you invite her on the board. But really, you didn't want to hear a completely, different opinion, or you were just expecting her to be compliant. But she's not. She's pretty vocal. So here, the women actually treaded this double bind, the sort of warmth, competence of how to be loud but not too loud, and how to remain liked while at the same time be not be a rubber stamp, essentially. And here we also saw, for many firms that we spoke to, how the biases started to be corrected, because these were women who were actually knew a lot about the company. And this 2 or 3 firms that we spoke to, they said, we're just sitting around, she's running the show because she's so good. So here the initial resistance was countered in many cases. In some cases, they want the companies were not up to it, or they didn't have those. I think male allies were absolutely central in that journey. When there was a lot of opposition, there was nobody to back them up, and they sort of left. So here in that quadrant 1, we do have a lot of correction of biases. And then the other interesting dynamic that's happening is in quadrant 4. And so please visualize, because we no longer have the slides in front of us. Those are the firms that want an independent value representation, but they haven't been able to find it. So these were firms, for example, who were very clear when they spoke to us, we are looking for somebody. Ideally, we've got 5 buckets. If you want to take, she should industry experience, ho jaye, yeah, accounting, or maybe regulatory background, somebody who has an in on the government and so on. But we couldn't find someone who also, on top of all of these, had the personality that we wanted to work with. Somebody who doesn't rock the boat too much. And so they hired very differently from what the way they hired men. With men, they were able to find enough people in their network. With women, they went to PICG. And so, in some cases, you ended up with a woman who was, in their words, a wasted seat. Somebody who they didn't have a choice. They didn't want to add another seat. It's too big a board and so on and so forth. So we have those situations also. In those cases, as you can imagine, your biases are actually exacerbated. They become worse. Now, in terms of input, at least I should be able to see my voice. Sorry. So I've just got 2 very, very quick slides. So what we find here on the outcomes. So on the balance, we find that the receptiveness to women has increased. There is no longer that resistance. A lot of people who spoke to said, मैं शुरू में तो मुसीबत पड़ गई थी कि अब लड़कियों को भी ना मेरे एक और चीज करनी पड़ेगी, how will we find and what, how will it disrupt? There was a very informal kind of environment in some boards before, which then everyone sort of had to behave a little bit better. So that's the one thing that we found. And the proof of concept. So the proof of concept, that's what the idea of a quota is, right? That you want to see the women can work in boardrooms. So that has been established and that continues to be established, and that the biases are also, and culture is changing. We did find that. Also, we found that women are also working on the pipeline of other women. So a lot of women directors that we spoke to have put in place policies for their to have more women in their workforce, to create better conditions for women in their workforce. They are also working on being better allies for each other, because yahan pe we found somewhat mixed kind of findings. There were some women, especially quadrants 1 and 1 and 4, quadrants 1 and 4, where there's a little bit of insecurity. I mean, literally, there's quite a lot of insecurity, and where you have insecurity, women can get locked into competitive versus collaborative, instead of collaborative, into competitive frameworks. And I think they were super conscious of the fact that this is where they want to be, not here. Okay, and just some points to counter that I want to leave you guys with is that it continues to be easier to find suitable men for board positions. They have normally longer industry experience. They've been around longer. There's more of them who've been around longer. They have better access to informal networks, and this is really where most of the hiring for board positions, which is why you will see that when you had the SECP regulation, your quadrant 2 women got stretched more. The stretch factor is something that we find in European and US countries also. And then the corporate pipeline is still fairly weakly developed. The other question that I hope that we can talk about together is how much is enough? Many European countries go for quotas that are 30% or 40%, some don't even have quotas. But we found in our fieldwork that there is a significant difference in the experience being the only woman on the board versus being with other women, particularly quadrants 1 and 4, which are almost entirely occupied by just the one woman. Interesting variation between the type of company. And the last question that I will leave you with is that, there is a lot of focus on developing the corporate pipeline, on getting women ready, so emotionally, psychologically, but do we really need to only focus on women? What about the other board members who are to create that space for them and to hear them and to listen? So I will leave you here, and Zara, apologies, I'm not saying knowledge.
So much, Nazish. That was really interesting. Some very interesting insights coming from you. And I think now we've heard what research says. Let's hear what practically board members have to say and what their experience has been. So, Amreen, I'm going to start with you. Yes, I understand. So my question is, do female board members, do they feel that they are able to influence decision making in boardrooms? Do they face biases? What kind of biases, and how do they navigate them?
Anyway, I have a little bit of different experience if I talk about myself, because I think Rest and Nazish had put up very his research, and other people will explain their influences, because I was somehow I was on the board of within Pakistan on UN Global Compact Network and Fair Trade Pakistan in early 2000, and I have been on international boards again almost during the same time. So I can do a little bit of comparison what happened when I was on the board after 2017 or 2019. But again, in UN, the first board I was on with a very industry people like Babar Ali and everybody in UN Global Compact, and I was the only one on that board. But I felt that on those boards, because I was invited of so-called whatever my expertise on sustainability and environment, social, ethical issues at that time. So I felt that it came with everybody is like, okay, she's there because she has come up with something they would listen to me more, and they were interested in learning more from my side, and it was more so I felt no barriers, probably at least no barriers at that time. And again, since likewise, in international boards, of course, there is a different story. There are more women, because in Pakistan, I was the only woman initially, of course, in those boards. But when I was invited after this SRO or whatever came in, I would receive a phone call, and people would say, okay, we want you to be on our board, but we have to have a woman on that board. One woman on the board. Probably they were trying to explain to me and I felt like, okay, have you seen my CV? Do you know what kind of experience I bring in? So please first go and look at that. And then, of course, and during the board meeting also, I felt a little bit of initially those kind of okay, she's there just to sit. So everybody would ask again the similarly tea, everything nicely. They will talk nicely, and then whenever I tried to speak, nobody was interested, and probably somebody will cut down and said, oh, she may say something which is not relevant. So these kind of things, and of course, new ideas. Nobody was expecting me to say anything differently, come up with new ideas according to my experiences. This has happened, and of course, and in some of the committees which I was going to chair, being a chair of that committee, of course, there are some people who they thought, okay, she can handle that, because there were one or two allies. I had made few allies within the board, but the rest were again, they tried. I have again a feeling that there was some kind of a barriers that they would try to not attend the meeting sometimes. They had some excuses or things like that, but which then I felt maybe they're not very comfortable having somebody chairing the board meetings. Anyway, so this but coming back to what could have been done, or which we can focus more on, try to basically improve on these issues or barriers, or create more comfortable zone for that. Of course, when you issue some what do you call it, SROs? Directives or whatever. So before issuing that, you have to create an enabling environment for the whole. You have to understand what can be the repercussions of these things, because some people felt that it was an abruptly, there were so many women on the boards and nobody knew how to handle them, how to react, what to do. So and again, within the directors training, I feel that the focus which was missing, of course, the women who were brought to be trained as directors, they need to be given more information. I can say about the barriers of what can happen, and or more confident on themselves that it's you are being trained because you are bringing something different. Even if you don't have a number of years within yourself, you have something within you, like again the women empathy or whatever. There are so many other, not only empathy, but more creativity, more flexibility, more handling things, multitasking, or these kind of things. You are bringing that. It's not only if somebody tells you, okay, you have 10 years of experience and we have like 20 plus years of experience. So that should be part of the training, and for the men, of course, of accepting women as directors, or more like probably again, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted today. And the behaviors, of course, the male behavior is that the woman is not always, you have to respect a woman, you have to be very polite to the women, but you also have to listen to her and accept what she's saying. We have those mental barriers. So for the directors, and that's what I'm saying, that of course we can't change the whole society, but for the directors, we have to focus on these things. And another thing which, of course, I had being a women, another thing, because when I ever asked for some flexibility within when I'm at the senior position, or even as a woman at initially, because of my creativity, I wanted some flexibility in timing and some other things. People would think that, oh, she want this flexibility she needed because she's a woman and she can't do this and she can't do this. So these are a few things which people have to understand, and I think and as women, we on board, I think what is needed more is passion, persistence, performance, and positivity. To, of course, you will find barriers, you will find restrictions, but you have to come up with handle that with the positivity and say things will improve. And definitely, I think that should be enough for now. I don't want to take more time. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very well said.
I think my next question is for Fiza. How do you think women are being selected onto boards? Do you think their journey on boards or into senior leadership, do you think it's different from their male counterparts? Do you think the needle has moved in terms of the 98% male leadership that we see here? What are your thoughts?
Right, thank you. So thank you so much Anand, for this excellent research and putting it out there for all of us. So lots of things I would like to say, because I've had very diverse experiences earlier on boards of on family boards when I was the CEO of Baksh Foundation, Baksh Energy, global boards, including the UN Secretary General's high-level panel. Now I'm on the global board of Save the Children, and then on public sector boards and private sector boards. I would like to share some personal experiences as well, but I think the needle has moved in terms of what Nazish also presented earlier. The fact that we've all realized that women leadership and women on boards is not just a social gimmick or a CSR gimmick or the right thing to do or a quota or a check in the box, but it's actually a business case. I think ये बात establish हो चुकी हुई है कि it's the smart thing to do. It's an economic dividend related matter. It's a business case. When you have more women on boards and in leadership positions, you are getting a certain diversity that is now needed in this day and age for any business to run successfully. And men and women and leaders have accepted this, I think. The whole UN Secretary General's high level panel that I was a part of made this a global fact that empowering women in leadership positions, in governance, in boards is a business case. And McKinsey backed that with this gender parity report. I don't know how many of you have had the chance to read it, which states, after doing a survey of top Fortune 500 companies, that companies that have more women in board positions and management outperform companies that do not by 26%. I'll send that report to you as well, as you can maybe incorporate the findings in your research as well. And uski basis pe हमने जब भी women empowerment पे काम करना शुरू किया उसके बाद, especially in the private sector, we did it as a business case. So this is like we're not filling any quotas, we're not filling any chairs, we're not just doing it to look good. It's not a CSR gimmick, it's a business reality. And that's what led me to launch the Champions of Change Coalition in Pakistan, because you see, I've been in this space for a while. All of these women here, we've been here for a while, and it's always been women empowerment, women leadership. These talks have been mostly by women, to women, in a room of women, on International Women's Day. Something gets painted pink, and here we go, women empowerment is done. Whereas 98% of your leadership is men, right? So to really get those men to shake up and really help enable them to realize how important it is to handhold and build the capacities of women to come and sit next to them is a realization that this Champions of Change Coalition brought. And when I launched in Pakistan, everybody told me it's an Australian best practice, the Champions of Change Coalition. And it basically gets male CEOs to commit to gender equality and to commit to certain KPIs that we do a formal stock takeoff. EY is my technical advisor here in Pakistan. McKinsey is my technical advisor in Australia. जब पाकिस्तान में लॉन्च किया तो सबने मुझे कहा कि यार ये ऑस्ट्रेलिया में तो चल गया, पाकिस्तान में नहीं ऐसी बातें चलने वाली. Like no CEO in Pakistan will come to you after every 3 months and report on their gender stock take and how many women they've empowered in the leadership and how many women do they have on the board now. I guess चलो नहीं चलेगा तो नहीं चलेगा, काफ़ी चीज़ होती हैं जो नहीं चलती. It's okay. So we launched it as the first international chapter 3 years ago, and today it's the largest group globally. And I have CEOs from MNCs, the Unilevers, L'Oreal's, Pepsi's, Telenor's, Jazz, but then also the Interloops, the Chutani Industries, the Liberty Mills, Naveed Fazil, he's one of my key champions of change. And that has proven that when you get male allies to understand the business case of empowering women, to understand the economic dividend of empowering women, to understand what is in it for them, to get women on the table, they will actually work towards it. And that's when the change will happen. Right? When you get that 98% of leadership at the top, which is still 98 unfortunately, to really realize and ensure that empowering women in leadership positions and governance positions becomes their KPI. तभी एक्सेप्टेंस भी आएगी, तभी कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग भी होगी, और तभी उस फेवरेबल बैलेंस्ड इक्विलिब्रियम एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर वुमेन कैन थ्राइव इन लीडरशिप पोजीशन एज वेल. So I think initiatives like these are really moving the needle, and I feel whenever we now meet, I have 35 members on my coalition, we meet every quarter, and every quarter we see significant increases in their actual data for leadership positions, for board positions. Interloop ka to I think 60-40 ho gaya hai ab. Ulta chale gaye. I know. So, you know, it's really this kind of encouragement, these kind of initiatives that really are helping move the needle from where we were to where we are now. Acha, in terms of, so hence male allyship and the right kind of support systems and programs and collaborations like these that really drive the needle. And then I feel in terms of experiences, so I completely agree with what the lady just said. जब हम लोग I was on the board of Diamond Basha Dam, and I'll just give this personal story, because I think this is useful. Public sector and private sector का जो difference हमने बात की थी. So I was appointed on the board of the Diamond Basha Dam in the last government. Obviously, the only woman, not just on the board and on the table in the room, but in the entire building, right? Wabda House में female washroom भी नहीं था, because obviously कभी उन्होंने खातून देखी नहीं थी. So, anyways, experience, all our experiences. And now being the only woman on that table, and I've been on the only woman on many tables, so it wasn't something different for me, but it was just a new fun experience. And women need to realize that also, that instead of getting intimidated by the situation, enjoy your unique individual presence on the table, right? You are the only woman there because you're there to prove the potential of a woman on that table. So, anyways, when I was on that, it was very funny, and I share this anecdote with people because half of the men in the room, they knew who I am. So they professionally knew me. Even the chairman started off with a dear gentleman and lady. So they acknowledged my presence as a board member. The other half who didn't know me professionally obviously thought I'm the token, I'm the check in the box. अच्छा अब वो बात करते हुए they're going around the table and they will just like not even do eye contact with me and skip me and then go and start talking to the others. Then they'll come back and then they'll go and they'll just, as if we don't want to see you, we don't want to acknowledge you, you're invisible. You're here for a check in the box. I found it really funny in the beginning. This is like very recent baat hai, itni purani baat nahi hai. And I actually found it funny in the beginning, but then I thought that, let's establish yourself on the table. Let's make them realize that I'm here, not just as, I don't know which quadrant that was, but not just as a check in the box, but actually for my competence and for my knowledge in the energy sector. That's why I'm being appointed here. And then I started asking very specific, very technical questions to those men who had been ignoring my presence so that they could look me in the eye and talk to me and answer back, so that they know कि अच्छा मतलब खातून को कुछ आता भी है. Yeah, I don't know which quadrant I'm falling in right there, Nazir, but I think I just jumped to quadrant. So, you get these experiences till date, and it's not always easy, it's not always accepting, but you have to mark your presence on the table. I think it's the onus is on the woman as well. Kota ho gaya, ban gaya. You have to go out there, network, to get your place on that table, and then to prove yourself on that table. Because I think, and you'll have lots of examples, because not every table is going to be the same, and not every table is going to be as accepting. But I think the onus lies on the woman as well. One, to network, and all those points were absolutely correct, and that's what men do differently than women, and to be more available, to be out there, so that companies can find you. Because lots of companies come to us asking us कि यार कोई वो 5 नाम नहीं चाहिए, कोई छठा नाम बताओ, So we need to give those options out there, and then to be able to put your mark on the table and to be able to tell them that I'm here, not just because of that check in the box, but actually because of my professional competence. So I feel, long story short, and I'll pass it on because I know we're short on time and there's a lot to discuss, but I feel the needle is definitely moving with all of what I'm seeing around me, the business case, the male allyship concept strengthening. But in reality, when you're actually sitting on that table, there will still be those nuances that you'll experience. And then every day is a new day, every challenge is a new challenge. But women need to realize that being the only woman on that table is a strength for them rather than a weakness. So yeah, I'll just end it now on this note and we'll pick it up again.
Thank you so much. That was a very positive take on. That was a very positive take on the experience, and I'm glad to hear that there's some difference. And there's some.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Fatma, I'd like to come to you. Sorry, Abdurrahman sahab, aapko not to.
Yes, we more
You can also
go. We'll have a balanced view.
I think we're okay. Perhaps I'll bring you on. So let's hear what the SSCP has to say. But and I think we'd like to hear from you as well what the context of this regulation was, and how do you see its impact, and how do you see how firms have reacted, and where does the future lie? Do you see, is it okay, is just one female representative on the board enough, or is there need for more gender parity, and or are we ready for that like other countries? So just wanted your perspective on that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zara. First of all, I'm very grateful that you remembered SCCP. You invited me. Thank you very much for that. Although I'll begin with a disclaimer that my views are my personal views. I don't speak on behalf of SCCP, but now that I've spent more than 2 years at SCCP, some of the things that I'm going to say, I can claim that those are very closely aligned to the mindset at SCCP. I think there are 2 or 3 major aspects where SCCP's senior management is very concerned. One, of course, is safety at the workplace. We want women to feel safe, both physically and psychologically. I think one good initiative that SCCP has recently taken is to make it mandatory for the listed companies to have an anti-harassment policy, although it is already a legal requirement in Pakistan. But now we have included it in our code of corporate governance also for the listed companies. And this requirement now requires them not only to have a policy, but also a committee, also a process to deal with anti-harassment complaints. So I think this is a good step in that direction, and I would like to know more from the other panelists as to what else could be done to make women more safe and comfortable in the workplaces. The second one is, of course, employment, the labor force participation, as Nazish referred to. I don't think SCCP makes it mandatory to have a certain percentage of women in the workforce for the listed companies, but I think one welcome development, of course, has been to require at least one board member to be a woman. And I was really glad to hear Nazish saying, acknowledging that quotas can have both pros and cons. Although I don't personally see this requirement even as a quota, because requiring just one of the board members to be a woman, I think it should be seen everybody less as a quota requirement and more as a way to ensure diversification in the board. But I would really like to, after this discussion, my mind is also opening up to new ideas, and I would request all the panelists and the audience to come up with more thoughts and recommendations as to what else can SCCP do. Would it be a good idea to at some stage require a certain percentage, maybe 10 or 20% of the entire work in the corporate sector to be women? I honestly don't see such small percentages as quotas. I think quotas become more controversial when they are too high. When we reach a level of 40 or 50%, probably there can be more debate about the pros and cons. But at our level of women participation in the workforce and in leadership positions, I think making these requirements of having 10 or 20% women is absolutely necessary. The third aspect is, of course, the pay gap. Are women with similar talents and capabilities being paid at par with men? I think recently SCCP has taken an initiative, and now all the listed companies would in future be required to report the median compensation for male and female employees and the gap in those compensations as well. And I completely agree with Nazish that more disclosures, requiring more disclosures from the corporate sector can go a long way. Probably in many cases, they can do more benefit than the regulation itself. Any specific requirements to have a certain number of women. Probably if we just ask the corporate sector to start disclosing more information about how many women do they have at different levels of their workforce, and in what ways they are doing better or worse than their male counterparts, without making it legally mandatory to employ more or less women. I think the simple requirement of disclosing more about the ground realities can go a long way. I think it's a good idea to have more women who have worked on different boards talk about the biases that they have confronted. I think that will help us figure out what strategies can be followed to address them. Although I personally think that probably in the long run, biases require behavioral change, and this comes mainly through more education, more awareness. more civil society organizations like CDPR and Champions of Change talking about the issue, SCCP holding seminars to discuss the issue. I think sometimes the best thing even the government or the public sector can do is to create more awareness. I think in the long run, education and awareness can probably do more good for the society than outright specific legal requirements and then enforcing them ruthlessly. Culture, I think, is critical, and that is why I'm a big proponent of having more women at all levels in the organization. I am very convinced that it always has a positive effect on the culture. When you have a diverse workforce, when you have a diverse membership in a committee or in a decision-making body, it always brings more perspectives on the table. So from a diversity and from a cultural perspective, it is always beneficial. The performance part can be a bit debatable, although it was heartening to know the research that Ms. Fiza shared, that most of the researchers around the world are convinced that it is a strong business case already. And those companies where women have greater participation are performing better also. One constraint that women face in our society that I've personally observed is that they have a dual set of responsibilities. We still expect the working women to contribute more to the household responsibilities. That puts an extra burden on them. And within the organizations that I have worked, I have consistently observed that it is very difficult for women to continuously upgrade their skills and pursue ongoing education and skill development, partly because they have lots of household responsibilities to take care of, and it's very difficult for them to balance their professional ambitions with their household responsibilities. I'm not sure how that is going to change. Probably more awareness, more understanding within the male members of our society, that they have to start taking a greater share of the household responsibilities. I think within the boardroom, although my experience of the boardroom is probably not as extensive as some of the other panelists here, but I do think that the board chair's role is very critical. The chair has to make sure that everybody's views are heard, and the senior and relatively more influential board members don't put their own views on the table to begin with. They let everybody else share their thoughts and ideas, and the senior and relatively more influential members in the senior management and board should preferably speak at the end. But I think this is again a cultural issue. It's not so easy to change the behaviors. I'm a big proponent of the training programs, so it's great that now there are many institutions in Pakistan that provide directors training program. So I think we should encourage and probably subsidize the training programs for aspiring women who want to take directorship positions, and probably these training programs are a useful platform to educate the male directors that they need to create more space and more empathy, and they should welcome a more proactive role by their female colleagues. I think when you're working in small committees or boards, it's important to have a repo, or as Nazir said, to have allies in the board. I think from a socialization perspective, women are at a bit of a disadvantage in our country. So I would think that the board members who are women would find it a bit more difficult to make more allies and to develop repo with their male members. So probably we can hear the perspective of our panelists on that. And ultimately, I think in a society like ours, I think the best thing that can happen is to have more feedback from independent organizations like yours, like the one Ms. Fiza is running. As the policymakers and as the corporate leaders get more feedback from the market, they are forced to make changes. I think that's the beauty of the institutional balance in the society. If independent researchers and analysts are encouraged and they get the required funding to do their research and to share it with the public, I think in the medium to longer term, that is going to make a lot of impact. After attending a conversation like this, probably I am going to go back and talk more about how we can empower women. So I think this has to continue, and the engagement between the diverse actors in the society, the regulators and the civil society experts and the entrepreneurs, that has to continue. So I think ultimately it is the stakeholders' feedback that will ensure that change happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should also acknowledge that the SECP has been very, very supportive of the research, and they've made available a lot of annual reports, because when we were working on unlisted companies, we were those reports are not publicly available.
Yeah.
We needed archives, and I just want to thank and acknowledge the SECP support.
Great. Fatma, my question to you is, based on your experience from various sports, do you think gender is a factor when a female board member is making decisions for the company? Do you think her approach is different? Do you think she's able to create a more enabling environment for other women? And does it differ from board to board? What has your experience been?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and it's great to be here on the panel. Fiza said it really well, so I'm just thinking what I'm going to add to what you said. And also very interesting perspective from the SECP, because it is important that it's not about regulating, it's about enabling. And it's very important that there's a partnership and collaborative approach between the regulator and how good corporate governance is not only maintained but aspired towards. So we're building for companies who one has to actually look from a perspective of why do board exist. So I'm just going to come to your question, but I'm taking it from a broader perspective. Is why is there the existence of a board? You have to think of it from that perspective rather than just the gender perspective. And when there's a fiduciary responsibility to safeguard the interest of the organization, the tone at the top defines how the organization below is going to function, quite frankly. So if the board is not progressive in its thinking, it's not open-minded, it's not futuristic and forward-looking, it's all about status quo, then that particular thought process permeates into the organization as well. And that also is a reflection of who is on the board. Aapne composition ki baat ki. Composition of the board is extremely important because that includes the chair of the board as well as the board committees. If we bring on people from a skill set, mindset, behavior perspective who are the same, then there is no diversity. So for me personally, diversity is beyond gender. Diversity is just the thought process and industry experience. Even in Pakistan, we have so much diversity. We may be Pakistanis, but if you come from a certain province, you come from within the certain province, the languages, the thought process, the culture, it's beautiful, but it's also far-reaching, and we don't think from that angle. Similarly, you encapsulate that at a board level. So what does a board really do? That's the starting point. That was one of the first questions when I did my certification with PICG as well as at Harvard. They said, why do you think the board exists? What is good corporate governance? So that's the first, and I'm not going to go into detail from that aspect. Nazish just covered it so well, and you're doing a deeper dive. So look forward to your outcome, and it was great to meet your team when you came over as well. Thank you. So the next step is, who do you want on the board? And when I joined the first board I joined was my own company, Abacus. I was asked to be part of the board, and I still remember when I was given that option, I said, well, I'm not ready. So one of the first things that we do as females is to doubt ourselves and say, oh, there are 5 boxes, I've done 3, so I've got 2 to go, as opposed to men, and no offense meant to them, it's just that you will say 3 out of 5, I'm ready for the job, I will learn on the job. So it's a bit of a psychological attitude. It's perhaps we're wired differently, whether it is culture, society. And by the way, in my experience with the boards that I've sat on and also exposure to international environments, this is not a Pakistani thing. This is universal. Some of the conversations I had, one of the forums that I am part of at an international level is called the Women Executive on Boards. And this is essentially the alumni by virtue of the CDC program I did at Harvard. And this is 70 countries represented. There's so many women who are much more senior and much more seasoned than myself. And they face similar, whether it is in the Americas, whether it's Europe, whether it's Asia Pacific. So please do check, let's do a fact check in terms of saying this is Pakistan specific. It is not. I would say my experience on boards has been far better in some cases with the respect that I have received on the boards that I continue to serve on and I have served on. Perhaps I got lucky. But and I'll come to that, why it makes what happens when you do step onto the board. And there are various things that we have to check on. So ek to ye aspect hai. So when you go into it from a mindset of, I am a woman, therefore, I feel that's the wrong place to start. It should be, do I deserve from an experience, from a qualification, from the value that I can add? Similarly, whenever you vie for a promotion in the respective organizations that you serve, think about it. You have a certain designation. Why? You got an offer letter. Why? Because you deserved it. Right? Similarly, if someone is offering you a position on the board, it's because you deserve it. I learned that the hard way, by the way. So a lot of self-doubting along the way. The next step is what you also said. Prove, not to prove that you are right, but to prepare and understand what does it mean to be a board member. It's very different from being even a chief executive officer. I'll tell you that. I serve on boards. I also have a CEO role of my own company. The thought process is very different. We're governing, we're not executing, we're not the management. So you're looking at a check and balance in collaboration with the regulator like SECP in our case, and seeing how can we ensure sustainability and performance as per what the strategic objectives of the organization are. The third thing I want to mention is allies ka. Allies are extremely important. Aapne bhi baat ki hai. One of the things that I've been involved in very closely over the last few years for Pakistan is the Women for Boards Allies, which is, steering committee hai hamari of 7-8 people. And it was, the last chairperson was Musharraf Hai, who's ex-L'Oreal and then Unilever as well. And we have 5 women and 3 men on that. There's Jahanara hai and ye Mimi, you know Mimi, Malia Bangash, she's there as well. Zafar Ahmed Khan Saab, who is ex-Angro Corp. He used to be a former CEO, very seasoned person from Karachi. And right now Maheen Rahman, who's the CEO of Infrazamin, she is the chairperson. And there's myself, and Saad Amanullah. So anyway, all 8 of us, what we've done over the last 2-3 years, and this will be perhaps helpful for you, is to create directories. So to your point of how do we enable other women, is also creating usual suspects. It got to a point where the 7-8 of us would be the ones who were getting the calls. Right now, I sit on 6 boards other than my own board, which is 7 boards, which is a bit too much. But, you know, actually, if 3 of them are non-for-profit, which is very close to my heart, it's where how can you add value on the non-for-profit, for-profit listed companies. That's the tricky one, so on the compliance. I just want to talk very quickly on the Women for Boards. So over the last 3-4 years, they've created directories. What we've started doing is nationwide listing women who are not only serving on boards, because there's visibility that should be given. And SCCP से भी बात की है इसमें, PICG से भी बात की है. So they're collaborating. There's an event next week, by the way, and आपके जो chairperson है, Akir Saab, he's going to be one of the guest of honors. So we're launching the 4th directory and aspiring women directors as well. So how do we advocate to what you need to do to be a board? So that's something that you may, my own experience has been amazing. Just to wrap this up, whenever I have been asked to sit on a board, I feel it is very important for us to also do a due diligence of the board itself. It's not just being asked to be on the board. That's very important. So whenever I was interviewed, especially for जो आपके listed companies हैं, because उसका fit and proper भी होता है, especially the bank. So on the Faisal Bank board, there was a very rigorous process. State Bank is the regulator for that. And when the interviews took place, you also check the mindset of the chairperson. You check the mindset of the board members who are interviewing you. You check what is this organization and how do I add value. And that's where women make a difference. So it's not, again, a box for you to tick either. It's a box for, it's not so much about the quota. I also agree on the quota. Yes, it's a stepping stone, but beyond that, it's inclusivity. Inclusivity of the culture of how the conversation goes. If the chairperson is not asking you to put your perspective, then maybe, and if you don't want to be, as you said, compliant, and you want to be vocal, then step down from that board. But then there are women out there who just want that, okay, compliance ho, meri understanding ho. You choose where you want to be, essentially, if you've been given the opportunity. But overall, mashallah, what I've seen is I've received the respect of those that I sit on the board. Maybe I also was very conscious about which boards I want to be on, who are the players on this board, and what value can I add, quite frankly. There's limited time at the end. I have to run my own company as well as be on the board. This week, I had 2 board meetings, and the time that I had to spend on my own company becomes limited. It's a bit exhausting, but it's also really exciting if you have an environment which is conducive to learning. That's very important. The other thing I found was, once you're at the table, it's not about playing the women's card. When you're at the table, you're the professional, sitting there, having the conversation, adding value. And the minute we start playing the women's card, I think we're fighting a battle which should not really be a battle. And we're also shortchanging the next generation of women or the next woman who would be potentially identified as the board. It's a hard pill to swallow because not all men perhaps think that way. You must find allies on the board who speak for you. That means you reciprocate that. You speak for them as well. But do it with preparation. जो आपने बात की ना कि 1 लाख मिलेगा. If you're going for the remuneration, then don't be on the board. I don't agree with that thought process. ठीक है, वो तो फिर मिल जाता है because, yes, of course, there's value for your time and one should be remunerated and compensated or incentivized to be on the board. But there's a greater responsibility. And once you focus on that, you also have to think कि एक organization में, चाहे वो Interloop हो या Faisal Bank है, there are 9,000 people, right? Your decision, your contribution is affecting lives of thousands of people. That should be the mindset of adding value. तो ये जब अगर हमारे झगड़े रहेंगे ना on the gender, The last thing is, हम लोग सब एक society से आते हैं. We are the society. I have this fundamental issue कि लोग ऐसे कहते हैं सारा कुछ, भाई we are the society. तो हमारा जो culture है, thought process है, for both men and women, it's coming into the organizations and it's coming into the boards. There's no such thing as a perfect situation. But we can walk the talk and we can demonstrate which battles to fight and who to ally with. There are women who I feel are also unnecessarily aggressive and unnecessarily playing that victim card as well. I'm sorry to say, with no offense, men. And men also do that. It's not just a one-way street. But if we can collectively raise the bar, we can really change the way the boards work. The comparison that I've seen, again, globally, SECP is a front runner compared to many other regulators around the world. I've done some research. We've also been pioneers in having more gender diversity and allowing that to happen, by the way. A front runner in many countries as well. We're much more progressive, we're much more facilitative, we're much more inclusive. So I think let's work on what is working. The needle has definitely shifted, it's definitely moved, and it's we need to shout out loud. One word of caution, if I may, I know we're out of time, but unfortunately this, after the Trump administration, and I'm sure some of you have read the news, is कि वो DNI को थोड़ा सा mandate को वो negate कर देंगे.
Yes.
Time will tell what actually happens, but I don't think it's going to be a long term because the women participation in the workforce is very important. It is very important for women to stay there because they do bring a certain level of positive culture, this empathy, this compassion, the conversations in the board. Many of the boards that I serve on, I was the first woman. Right. There are other women as well. It's not easy, but it did change the culture. There have been 2 instances where the CEO of that company, whichever board sides have specifically said, "Aapke aane se sara culture change ho gaya." So you make a difference that way, and that's how we balance it out. So you change mindset, collaborate. It's not us versus them; it is us and them. And if someone is not there, step away. It's not worth it. There's too much happening in this world. Okay, hum kare. So I've personally have had a great experience on the boards that I've served on. Allah ka shukar hai, to give back. And the main motivation for me has always been, how can I serve others and add value to their lives from a governance perspective? The mindset is very different. And it gives you a sense of, hopefully, a satisfaction that maybe you took a good decision and added value to even one person's life. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What you've said has really resonated with everyone, I think. I had a lot of more questions, but I think let's open it to the audience. I think they're also interested in asking. So anyone who wants to ask the panel, do you have any questions?
Okay, so you might not even have an answer for this. The answer just might be experience. But as you've mentioned, there's this self-bias or the second guessing. How do you train women or even young girls as they're going through their education and then professional journeys to kind of not do that? Because I feel like, again, with quotas and regulations and requirements, the opportunities will emerge. But what if you just don't believe in yourself? You don't take that opportunity because you're like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not equipped to do this.
Well, for me, I think it's a personal thing and it applies for both men and women. It's really just confidence and self-belief. And you got to stop doubting yourself, as we both said, and stop questioning yourself. And this is a norm. This is, again, what you said is a global situation where men say कि अगर जो भी job advertise होती है, a man would jump onto it and apply it. Yeah, of course, they're exactly looking for me. And the right woman with the right expertise, the right experience, the right degrees would question herself so many times, कि मैं कर सकूँगी, नहीं कर सकूँगी. So I think it's really just to have that confidence in yourself and just not think twice. और ज़्यादा तो क्या हो जाएगा? Like again, when I was just telling the story of Champions of Change, when I launched it, so many people told me it's going to fail. So many. And I thought, चलो क्या हो जाएगा? इतना कुछ करते हैं, कुछ गड़बड़ भी हो सकती है. It's okay. Some work, some don't work. So stop doubting yourself, stop questioning yourself. Just jump in there, and it shall be fine. And then look at role models, and talk more and more to role models. And I think mentorship is also one thing that really helps in this, because just like Fatma said, the first board of, or she turned it down. And now she's sitting on 7 boards. Yeah? You're sitting on 7 boards, right? Huh. So I think that mentorship, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Well, that's, at times you need that right push also. At times the universe also has to give you that push. But now, like if you hear her experience, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you can just jump in the first go. So I think mentorship and role modeling really helps.
The problem is, and I completely agree with what Fiza said, but also हमारी society जो है ना थोड़ा सा हमें push करती है to self-doubt ourselves. ये कैसे हो जाएगा? What are you talking about? And again, both men and women, boys and girls as well, breaking the confidence. Because, you see, why do you break someone else's confidence? Because you yourself are not, whoever that may be. It could be in the family, and it starts from the family. जो ये culture हमारा mindset है, it starts from the family. And I'm not saying your parents or anything, I'm just saying broader culture ऐसे ही है. And then we go into society as well. So I feel कि it is important to learn those valuable lessons. I had a lot of self-doubt when I was growing up in teenage years, as well as, there are rejections along the way, and life teaches you a lot of things as well. So the idea, the mentorship is excellent. Find that person, but then build your skill set accordingly. And I just, from your question, I remembered आपने जिक्र किया कि opportunities of academic enhancement of girls. I feel that this generation, and the maybe generation before that as well, and now the next generation, everything is technologically available, right? We live in a digitally disrupted world, but also transformative world. So skill development is not something that it's only in a classroom. You have that access, and on that you can build your interpersonal skills as well. There's some fabulous programs on interpersonal skills, on confidence building, on presentation skills. Just go for it. Yeah, and know yourself.
Now it has also online courses.
Yes.
I think you're basically saying that many of us suffer from this negative self-talk. And I think intuitively we all know what is the solution. Switch to more positive self-talk. And I think now there's plenty of stuff on the internet that teaches you how to reframe a situation in a positive light. Even if you have faced a certain failure in a certain situation, you can reframe it as an opportunity to learn more and develop more. And there are now positive visualization techniques and all sorts of meditation and mindfulness techniques. So I think there's plenty of knowledge that negative self-talk is to some extent a natural phenomenon on our path to more evolution and learning. And the obvious answer is to train ourselves towards more positive self-talk and positive visualization.
Maybe
I-
past.
It was handed to me.
Okay.
Thank you guys. That was really insightful. I had a question about the research. You said that you found some companies that were already going above and beyond the Companies Act ki basic requirement. What I was wondering is, what's the largest percentage of women that you found on the board? And if you were to compare the way it functioned and the way that company was performing to, let's say, a control set or somebody who's either not compliant or just has the one? How did you find it was different?
So there are some boards that are almost entirely women. They are, some women-dominated boards. I wouldn't say that in terms of successful boards, I think are all very active in the way that they engage. They come prepared. They, are interested. They actually do. Some of the things that Fatma pointed out as well. What we saw. What we saw de facto, some of the things that I talked about that affect your voice on the board, de facto, some people, some directors do behave in that way. They are compliant. They just want to tick the box. They're doing somebody a favor. They don't want. But this is not the practice of good governance. You don't have, when you sort of engage in that sort of superficial manner, or you refuse to engage at all, those are not good sort of or effective boards. So I would say, effective boards. It doesn't matter whether they are men or whether there are some women on them, or they're all women. In fact, they are sort of very active, vigorous sort of boards who are actively involved in their oversight and strategy function. And I don't know if you want to add to that. You've been on some, I think, boards which have more women.
Yes, well, the non-for-profit Akash Foundation, which has a 50-50, as well as Caravan. So mostly the boards that I'm on, which have equal representation or more females, have been more on the non-for-profit side rather than the listed companies. The listed companies still have to catch up. Even the private limited companies, not so many, well, at least the boards that I've served on. As I said, the good news is that the receptivity towards having more women is there, because the focus is not just, yes, you tick the box to care, but they also talk about inclusivity and definitely impacting the performance of the organization. Even the Mercer study, unka hai, I think I mentioned it during our interview as well, when women thrive, businesses thrive, and they've had these studies done at the board level as well. So the ROI, the return on assets, the profitability has definitely taken a positive upward movement. And this is again a global study. This is not specific to Pakistan. Though it is changing, no doubt about it. But we need to have more women aspiring to be on boards. That means more women in leadership positions within organizations. And that's something that I'm also very committed to within my own organization. How do we develop women into leadership roles and then give them that opportunity to serve beyond just the execution of the organization?
Does anyone else have a question?
First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Nasir Hussain, and I'm working as a communication specialist in Asian Development Bank project. I remained as executive board member of the Pakistan Youth Alumni Network as well last year. So actually, apart from this representation of the females in the board side and all these things, we are currently undergoing a project which is improving workforce readiness in Punjab. And our main important aspect of this project is to bring quality and relevance of TVET and equitable access. So we are going to change the general perception and the mindset that females should come towards the skills development program, and they must enroll themselves in non-formal education, because it's a very highly paid jobs, and there are a lot of opportunities for them. But currently we are facing that there is no acceptability in our society, because when the parents think about that, the children will work on, especially females, will work on the machines and all this, think there are stereotypes, taboos attached with them. So we are facing a lot of difficulties. I mean, we started in Institute of Surgical Technology, Sialkot, where we are especially the competency-based training programs we are offering. So only one female came over there instead of applying to that admissions courses. So what we need to do, think more side from the private sector as well as the public sector, so that we could encourage females towards the skills development side. And
There is a lot happening within the skill development, but skill development has to be complemented by advocacy. तो जो आपकी because essentially at the I mean aside from Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad जो KLI का आपका troika है, बाकी there are cities and towns where I think the culture is more community based. So जो मेरी experience रही है with the Kashf as well as Caravan Crafts, which is essentially building vocational training of the rural women of Pakistan. उसमें community based focus बहुत है. So what happens is one person comes out, one lady comes out, maybe she's brave, she's courageous, she takes the step, and she's supported by people from her home, essentially either her father or brother or husband. ऐसे ही होता है. And that one person is a success story. Then she advocates to the community about not only the merits of that program, but of the safety. जो इन्होंने भी बात की, safety and security. That is for us very important. The other thing that organizations have done is, for example, Kashf. They invite the in-laws. When a girl is getting married, they invite the in-laws to the organization and say, ये काम कर रही है. This is what she's doing. So what they're doing is they're engaging the family and the community, and it's a trickle effect, but it does have a great impact. मैं आपको if I can just, I know we're out of time and I also have to rush, and I'm sure everyone, I'll give you one example of this amazing, there are hundreds of examples which are heartwarming. I think we have to focus more on the positives. So many years ago, this lady, she from one of our smaller towns in Punjab, she became a widow and she had 4 children, young children, and unfortunately the area that she lived, जो हमारा थोड़ा सा societal negative thought process है, ये तो बेवा हो गई है, इसका अब क्या बनेगा, blah blah blah, and it's all negativity and it's because of her, our son died, etc. So she did not get any support from her in-laws. She didn't even get support from her own family, which is unfortunate. And in that community, she was ostracized. She goes, takes a loan, 10,000 रुपए, उस वक़्त मैं 20 साल पहले की बात कर रही हूँ, from Kashf Foundation, and she starts, उसमें हुनर था, she did these handicrafts and everything, and with that, उनकी income आई, financial empowerment हुई थोड़ी बहुत, she educated her children, and she built a small business. First employees were her children. They got not only handicraft skill, but also entrepreneurship, accounting, marketing. बन गया ना, and she educated them 20 years down the road. This is archive. You can go and talk to the Kashf Media team as well. The whole mohalla or sari community send their children to her for advice, counseling, financial advisor. Because uske sare bachche jo hai now, they're working in organizations. I mean, these are beautiful stories.
Many stories like that.
Yeah, but someone stepped out and gave her that opportunity and supported her. So wo jo community-based thought process hai na, that really enables. So I hope this program is successful, but it's to rally the community over there. Other than the metropolitan cities, that's the only way this country works. Well, that's my experience.
No, that's great.
So I would add to that is that culture is very changeable. So it just takes a few success stories, and there are many
To change mindsets.
stories of this sort. I mean, Ghar Par is another. It's a service that gives beauty services at home, and initially people were very resistant. They were not sure, but when the money starts coming in, you start supporting your family.
Yeah.
You start. And I've had experiences of women who then employ the in-laws who were so resistant in the beginning. They become the biggest supporters, and India has seen so many transformations of that sort. They've been able to change a lot of their dowry culture, the bride suicides that were happening by women sort of getting into the IT sector. And they refused to be part of that culture. They didn't want to. They didn't want the parents to be under pressure. The parents were not in such a rush to get those girls married anymore.
Yeah.
They were willing to wait, and they were willing to wait for the right person. And they were financially assisted. So once those stories start happening, they're so empowering that the impact on changing the culture for the entire community is actually there.
And just to add to that, women don't really have to go into the office. They can work from home.
Yes.
The opportunity है online आपका e-commerce इतना बढ़ गया है, platforms आ गए हैं. You have access to a wider market. So that mindset change is extremely important.
And in today's society, I think the economic dividend that you mentioned, when communities, families realize the economic value of the woman getting out of the house and bringing a second income, and that really helps change mindsets very fast.
In Sialkot, आपकी जो football की industry है, they, I went to this factory to forward sports की, almost all women on the factory floor. What did it start off with? They're no longer hand stitching footballs. That comparative advantage उनका था of hand stitching, now it's all thermo bonded. But those women were so used to getting their income while sitting in their homes with this child labor law started coming in, and you had to have every football being manufactured in the factory. It was monitored. Those women moved to the factory floor. It was
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add something in this.
Last,
Yeah, my name is Shahzad Bukhari. I'm working as a training specialist in the non-profit organizations in development sector. आपकी suggestion क्या बनी जो भी suggestion थी है आपने जो football stitching की बात की, so I had a research in Sialkot कि जब ये football का issue आया था तो बहुत सारी female तो वो hand stitch करते थे football को, तो they were out of their livelihood. तो फिर they were just looking for कि को कहाँ engage किया जाए. So I just conducted the research and talked to the industry कि इसको कैसे engage किया जाए. तो उसमें half of them were willing to go to the industry. जो young लड़कियाँ थी बेचारी वो जा सकती थी. लेकिन there were many of the very female members जो they were looking after the house as well. तो उनके लिए घर पे छोड़ के जाना बड़ा मुश्किल था. क्या किया जाता. तो उसमें फिर I just give them 2 suggestions कि आप या तो कर लेंगे जो तो जा सकती हैं and talk to the industry कि उनको pick and drop दिया जाए और they can just go to the industry and they can just use the same stitching skill in the other sports की और बहुत सारी और चीजें जहाँ पे they can use their stitching skills. लेकिन वो जो नहीं जा सकती उनके लिए क्या किया जाए? Then we talk to the Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Funds, PPF. So then what they did, they just established a small stitching unit inside the community. Community के अंदर एक छोटा यूनिट बना दिया गया और वहाँ पे को 12-14 मशीनें लगा दी गई और जो की machines और जो whatever the required machine होता है. And then we talk to the industry कि आप अपना इंस्ट्रक्टर और सामान यहाँ पर भेज दीजिए और वो खवातीन जो यहाँ से जा नहीं सकती they can just walk into the that center and they can spend their time 2 घंटे 4 घंटे 5 घंटे based on their availability and they can easily take go back to their homes. So ये setup बहुत अच्छा रहा. तो वो आपके लिए suggestion मेरी request मेरी ये हो सकती है कि rather sending the girls to the institution, why don't we bring the
institution to the girls?
The institution को community level पे लेकर आया जा सके. तो मेरा ख्याल है कि this is just a matter of trust. कि हमें नहीं पता हमारी बच्चियाँ हमारे खवातीन जब जाएंगी institution के अंदर what will happen there. तो उस trust को बहाल करने के लिए मुझे लगता है कि अगर हम उस infrastructure को community level पर लेकर आ जाते हैं तो community अपनी आंखों से देखती है तो वो trust जो है वो build हो जाता है.
That's a good solution.
I just have one last comment and everybody's very brief.
So
And
this is-
this
this is my
skills
advice.
development part. So PST is another government organization, you must be knowing, we work with advocates as well. So अभी बात करें ना, so we also have this new CM initiative that we're launching. अभी बात कहाँ से कहाँ, so we talk about women in the board.
I know.
This has gone in another direction.
Going on that, I mean, again, we have a program for 3,000 women where, they have to be trained at home. We give them laptops, we give them all the internet facilities, everything. They can't, because the problem is they can't actually go out of the house, take a training, pick up something, which again, so catering that problem, they have to sit at home, take their training, have laptops and everything, earn for their families and, all of that. But then again, a question, so are we really empowering women by doing this? Making them stay at home and letting them know, this is only your boundary where you can just take everything, skills training within your house and do something. I mean, that's not a bad idea. But then the question is, are we empowering women by doing this? Rather than the fact that, hey, you can go out, take a training, maybe do something for yourself. So again, when it's a good idea to have a community-based training. PST has done that all its life, like since 2010. But then, we also have to take this note that we also have to empower women to a point where they can socialize, they can go interact, So उसके लिए भी मॉर्निंग में ये चीज भी आपने कहीं ना कहीं डालनी है कि
Yeah.
आपने एट रिजल्ट आपने women को empower करना है और empowered नहीं हो रहे there is no point. Because so that should be embedded with
Bilkul.
every design that we
Thank you so much for everyone's comments and questions. Yeah, and thank you so much to the panel. Thank you for bringing in such positive thoughts.
To her question, I just want to say two things. One, stepping stone, one step at a time. We're going all out and be problem solvers.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes, if we do that, everything changes. But give the people the option, maybe a raise doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's the point. Have more options.
Have flexibility.
So watch this.
But thank you, Zara.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure being here. It was a pleasure. Yeah, I just have to rush for a